WebSockets is what we're going to use for enabling the real-time chat functionality in our app. To use WebSockets, we have to use the socket.io module that is probably the most popular WebSockets module for Node.js. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into our app.js and we're going to make changes to the app.listen method that we have here. Essentially what is needed is to create a raw HTTP server by calling in the HTTP module and the HTTP module's create server method, wherein we are passing in a reference to the Express app. Once our server is defined, then we're going to create a variable called IO and we're going to set this to require socket.io, and we're going to follow this by the listen method, wherein we'll pass a reference to the server that we have just defined. So once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use app.set to create a variable called port, which will be set to process.env.port, or if the port is not defined in our production environment, then it should be set to a default of 3000. So once you have a variable called port defined, we will simply call server.listen, and the first argument would be the port, so we'll say app.get. Remember, we had used app.set earlier to create this variable. Now we're going to use app.get to simply fetch the value, followed by a callback function, which will simply have a console.log saying chatcat on port, followed by app.get port. Right? So this is how you configure an Express app to use socket.io. Now we have not downloaded socket.io yet, so let's just do that. So we'll say npm install socket.io --save. Now socket.io comes with two components: the Node.js app component, the module that we have called in our app.js by using the require socket.io, and a client-side JavaScript library which we're going to use in our chat rooms page. What we're going to do now is we're going to create a file called socket.js, and we're going to do that in a folder called socket. And this will contain all the socket.io code. Back in our app.js, we will simply require and call this file socket.js, and we're going to invoke the method because we're going to create a method just like how we have done in the routes.js and in the passport auth.js, and we're going to pass in a reference to the IO. In the socket.js, we'll say module.exports is equal to an anonymous function wherein we are passing in a reference to IO, and we'll leave it like this. Also, we are going to go into our chat rooms page and we're going to create a script tag which we're going to set to /socket.io/socket.io.js. So this is the client-side library that would be required on the chat rooms page, and this is what will enable our page, the client side, to interact with the socket.io module on the server side.